Warning, this podcast contains violence, sexuality, gore, and other horrible and disturbing things. Listener discretion is advised. Also, be aware that the hosts of this venture are ignorant dipshits, so please do not take anything they say as fact. And enjoy the show.
Now, are you sitting comfortably? Good. Then we'll begin.
Today we had 15 homicides and 63 violent crimes, as if that's the way it's supposed to be.
The atoms in your left hand probably came from a different star than your right hand.
It is our basic human right to be fuck up.
A second plane now has crashed into the other tower of the World Trade Center.
Putting chemicals in the water that turn the friggin' frogs gay.
The defendant shall be incarcerated for the rest of her natural life with no possibility of parole.
You are not machines. You are not cattle. You are men.
We were somewhere around Barstow, on the edge of the desert, when the drugs began to take hold.
Occultae Veritatis.
Hello and welcome to Occultae Veritatis. I am Ood Gallifrey, and right now we're going to be jumping into part 2 of a 2-part series on Jodi Arias. If you want some context, feel free to listen to episode 1, but if you're okay jumping in the middle of the story, then listen on. Just to give you an idea of what we went over already, we went through Travis and Jodi's early life, their meeting at the Prepaid Legal Services Conference, their relationship, the breakup, her stalking behavior, and her slashing the tires of Travis Alexander after the breakup, and finally her murdering Travis Alexander and all the things she used to prepare for that murder, including buying extra gas cans, making sure that nobody knew she was going on a detour to his house, all that good stuff. So we are starting off with the court case. So Jodi has already gone through her first 2 interviews and her first 2 versions of the story, and as we enter the court case, she is now entering with a 3rd version of the story.
Just hours from now, Jodi Arias' defense will begin. Did she kill her ex-boyfriend in a jealous rage, or did he die as she was fighting for her own life?
Jodi had to make a choice. She would either live or she would die.
For weeks, the prosecution has laid out every gruesome detail of how Mormon businessman Travis Alexander was killed. After initially lying to police, Arias finally admitted to stabbing him nearly 30 times and shooting him in June of 2008.
Jodi, this is over. This is absolutely over. You need to tell me the truth.
Listen, the truth is I did not hurt Travis.
First, she said she wasn't there. Then she was and witnessed intruders kill him. And finally, the version her attorneys are now telling the jury, that Arias killed Alexander in self-defense.
The defense is going to need an expert that is going to come in and clean up this mess of her multiple stories and explain that in some kind of a narrative.
Domestic violence experts will testify to try to explain away her lies, and ultimately most expect Jodi Arias herself will take the stand.
For her to get up in person on the witness stand and tell a story and show emotion and paint the picture of a woman abused is the strongest potential defense they have here.
Arias could face the death penalty if convicted. For Good Morning America, Ryan Owens, ABC News, Phoenix.
So the court case began. Juan Martinez wanted to seek the death penalty. Now, unfortunately, because of how the legal system is now constructed, there are still many examples of bias and discrimination within the court case, and one of them is the apprehension of juries and judges to sentence female defendants to death. There is an automatic apprehension. So it was pretty ambitious of Juan Martinez to want to seek the death penalty. In order to get a death penalty, you have to prove that the death was cruel or unusual. And he was arguing that with multiple wounds that would have been a killing blow, along with signs that the killing took over 2.5 minutes with Travis Alexander alive and suffering the whole time, with multiple stab wounds and the cut across the neck and the gunshot and all that stuff, that Travis suffered a great amount of pain and suffering before his death, and that was his basis argument around shooting for the death penalty for Jodi Arias. Her claim of self-defense, he found, was not very good explanation, just because of the amount of overkill that she delivered. Bunch of the wounds that she delivered him all would have been killing blows. The slicing of the neck would have killed him. The shot to the back of the head would have killed him, and a lot of the stab wounds would have killed him. So it seems that it was done with a rage that went kind of beyond him dying. She wanted to mutilate the corpse.
Yeah.
Just regular petty.
Oh, yeah. The prosecution argued that since a .25 caliber round was found near Alexander's body, and a week before the gun of the same caliber disappeared during a robbery of Arias' grandparents, Arias had staged the burglary and used the gun to kill Alexander. Martinez claimed that Arias had stalked Alexander and had slashed his tires twice. In addition, in the final days before his death, Alexander had called her a sociopath and the worst thing that has ever happened to me.
Damn.
Arias took the stand in her own defense on February 4th, 2013, and she testified for a total of 18 days. Basically, Juan Martinez, he had to break her down step by step, so she was a very accomplished liar. And she was able to adjust to new questions very quickly, and she's very smart. So he had to trap her several times to get her to admit any information on these 18 days. And they went through everything.
So you obviously believe that the guy was in the right and the girl was in the wrong.
I believe that she killed him.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it was inspired by domestic violence, but I think that she killed him.
All right.
Yeah. I suppose what brings me over to the side of believing that it was a planned murder instead of momentary self-defense against Travis Alexander is all the preparation she went through. She staged the robbery of her grandparents' house in order to obtain a gun to use against Travis. She went through all that gas can stuff in order to have enough gas to make it down to where Travis was without going to any gas stations in the area. She didn't want evidence that she was in the area buying gas, so she had to borrow and buy extra gas cans in order so she could make the whole trip without stopping in his state, because she didn't want evidence that she was there, along with throwing the camera of them together in the washing machine, trying to destroy that evidence, and the multiple different versions of stories that she told, one of which she stuck with for almost a year and a half. The story of where two people broke in and she had to get away, she stuck with that for almost a year and a half. And I think if it was simple self-defense, I don't think she would have taken all that preparation and all that effort in order to hide her story.
I don't know anything about this case, so I don't know.
Yeah. I guess Juan Martinez started to talk about their sex life. This was another part that scandalized the trial. This is something that Juan Martinez went into. They questioned her about her sex life over and over and over again. She said that anal sex was painful for her the first time she experienced it, but they did it because she was Mormon, and that's the proper kind of sex.
Wait,
that's
what?
the loophole.
Yep.
Oh.
Yep. Oh, yes, stuff gets fucky, I told you. A phone sex tape was played in which Alexander said he wanted to zip tie her to a tree and have anal sex with her while she was dressed as Little Red Riding Hood.
As you do.
Oh, yeah.
Like you do.
Alexander is heard on the tape telling Arias, "I'm really excited. I'm going to tie you to a tree and put it in your Mormon hole."
Mormon hole?
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, so that's part of the thing that.
Ooh.
So that's part of the thing that scandalized the trial is all this information coming out, and Jodi Arias being so forthright with it. It kind of had the reason to grab the media's attention is because it was these two Mormons, one accused of killing the other, and they had this live and public sex life because of the line of questioning that the prosecutor wanted to take. Well, really, I shouldn't say just the prosecutor. Both the prosecutor and the defense basically tried to sully the image of who they were interviewing using these people's sex life. What Juan Martinez was trying to do was show that the defense's claim that Travis forced her into the sexual relationship against her own will was incorrect. She's very involved in the planning and the fantasy, and she seems very excited by the sex. Now, I've listened to the sex tapes. I'm not going to play them on here because there's hours and hours of them that are played in court. And I don't think they would do much service here to get to the point. But if you want to listen to yourself, feel free. But if you want to take my word for it, it seems like they're two adults having a perfectly healthy sexual relationship. And the defense is basically grasping at straws. They're trying to say that Jodi didn't have sex because she was a devout Mormon and that Travis pressured her into it. But she seems like a willing and consensual, happy participant in the sexual relationship. And the defense in turn tried to sully Travis Alexander's image by saying that he was a sexual deviant for the stuff that was on this tape. For him wanting to tie Jodi to a tree and dress her up like a Little Red Riding Hood, along with many other things, the defense argued that he was a sexual deviant and that deviancy shared a relationship with domestic violence. But I don't really see any evidence of that. I'm involved in a lot of kink communities. I'm involved in a lot of sex-positive discussion communities, and I didn't see anything that was non-consensual or pressuring or anything like that. It seemed like two adults having fun. So I don't think there's any real basis to either the prosecution or the defense's case that them being involved in this secret sexual tryst where they're both Mormons and they're having a little fun with the contrast to their Mormon vows. I don't think there's anything really controversial about it. But the prosecution and the defense still insisted on using it in the trial. I guess any points you can score with a jury is points for your client.
Well, and because of the tape recordings.
Oh, yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and like I said, all of this is available on YouTube, so I'm going to be... I'll play portions of it that I can. Of the trial, probably not the sex tapes.
Definitely the sex tapes.
Okay, I'll play a little bit of the sex tapes for Leon.
You have a good-looking dick, baby. I just want to let you know.
You like my dick?
Yeah. It's like, it just, so smooth. And it goes so, every time you fuck me,
Arias testified that a relationship with Alexander became increasingly painful and emotionally abusive. Arias said that Alexander shook her while saying, "I'm fucking sick of you," and then began screaming at me, after which he body slammed me on the floor at the foot of his bed, saying, "Don't act like that hurts," before he called her a bitch and kicked her in the ribs. Afterwards, Arias said that he went to kick me again, and I put my hand out. Arias held up her left hand in the courtroom, showing that her ring finger was crooked. So she was saying that Travis kicked her in the hand, and it broke her finger and made it bent. And she was showing that in the courtroom. And on the trial tapes that I watched, it does look like her finger's bent. It doesn't look like a fresh wound. It looks a few years old. Of course, the incident happened 2 years previous, so it's believable. According to Arias, the dysfunction of the relationship came to a climax when she killed Alexander in self-defense after he became enraged, following her dropping his camera. What I'm about to play you is Juan Martinez, the state prosecutor, basically deconstructing the story, showing that it doesn't really make sense in terms of self-defense, that Jodi kept on attacking and kept on doing damage to Travis, even though he was at the point of being helpless. So here's that.
Exhibit 193. That Mr. Alexander was stabbed. You would acknowledge that, right?
Yes.
And you would acknowledge that that stabbing was with the knife, right?
Yes.
And according to your version of events, you would acknowledge that that stabbing was after the shooting, according to you, right?
I don't remember.
I'm not asking you if you remember, ma'am. I'm asking if you acknowledge that it would be you that did it, correct?
Yes.
And you would acknowledge that a lot of the stab wounds, and if you want, we can count them together, including the ones to the head, were to the back of the head and to the back of the torso, correct?
Okay.
No,
I don't count them. I don't know. I'll just take your word for it.
Would you like to take a look at the photograph?
No.
So if he is being stabbed in the back, would you acknowledge at that point that he's no threat to you, right?
Objection calls for speculation.
Overruled. I don't know.
Well, if he's already been shot, according to you, and he's facing away from you, how could he possibly be any threat to you?
I could only guess. I don't know what you're asking me.
Well, with regard to you were here when the medical examiner testified about the wound to the throat. Do you remember that?
Yes.
With regard to that wound, ma'am, you would acknowledge that was, in terms of the stab wounds, you would acknowledge that was the last wound in the sequence of events.
She doesn't remember.
Overall, that
How
wasn't.
can she acknowledge the sequence of the stabs that she doesn't know doesn't have any memory of them?
That wasn't the question. Overruled. You may answer the question.
Are you talking about his testimony?
Yes.
I disagree with the sequence of events.
Would you agree that you're the person who actually slit Mr. Alexander's throat from ear to ear?
Yes.
Would you also agree that you're the individual that stabbed him in the upper torso?
Yes.
And you're doing all of this according to your version of events. You're doing this to this individual after you have already shot him, right?
Yes.
So this is the third version of her story where she says, I killed him in self-defense because he was mad because I dropped his camera. And she was also using that as the explanation for why there's a picture of her ankle next to his dead body.
Makes sense.
When she was still in the stage of the second retelling, so I guess the second version of the story where she said that two people broke in and killed him and I got away, at that time she was interviewed and she said, no jury is going to convict me because I am innocent. You can mark my words on that. She appeared extremely confident when she was saying that I am totally innocent of killing Travis Alexander. When Martinez asked her, hey, what's with this contradiction? She said, I didn't expect any of you to be here. And at that time, she meant that she would kill herself if found guilty, so that's why she's never going to be found guilty.
What?
That confuses me.
Oh, sorry. I'll try and explain it again. So during the second retelling of her story, when she was still saying that two people broke in and killed Travis and ran away, at that time, she said that no jury is going to convict me because I am innocent, and you can mark my words on that. She was responding to a question saying, did you kill Travis Alexander? Right. And she was saying, I'm totally innocent of killing him. And that's why I'm going to be found innocent, because I'm totally innocent. And that caused her a problem when she got to the third version of the story, when she said that I killed him in self-defense.
Okay.
It kind of cut down her credibility a little bit.
I can see that.
Yeah. He said that Arias was likely suffering from acute stress at the time of the killing, said psychologist Richard Samuels. In response to a juror questioning, asking whether the scenario could occur even if this was a premeditated murderer, the psychologist said, is it possible? Yes. Is it probable? No. So the psychologist for the defense thought that she was under great stress, and that could be the result of her killing and going into overkill, just the acute stress.
Okay.
And he didn't think it was premeditated. The psychologist for the prosecution said that PTSD or amnesia. She found that she had no evidence that Alexander had abused Arias. Apparently the psychologist had interviewed all of Alexander's past girlfriends all the way into childhood, and none of them ever said that he abused. Now, that's not saying that he's innocent. Abusers can start their abuse at any time in life, but all his previous girlfriends told the psychologist that they saw no signs of abuse from him. So take that as you will. The more incriminating thing that the prosecution psychologist uncovered was the major inconsistencies in Jodi's memory. So Jodi basically claimed that a lot of her memory was in a fog, and that's what she referred to it as a fog. She could remember little snippets and pieces, but it was like she was staring through a dense fog and she couldn't see the whole picture. The problem was when the psychologist spent a few weeks interviewing and re-interviewing Jodi Arias, she saw a pattern where she would misremember things when convenient. Anything that might make her look bad or might incriminate her was suddenly became one of the things that she couldn't remember or couldn't see clearly. And as you heard in the tape, she's very careful about how she uses her language. Instead of agreeing yes to a prosecutor's question, she'll say, yes, I agree with your logic, or yes, I agree with your testimony. She never says that yes definitively, except when she's in a corner, and that's why she was on the stand for so long. Martinez had to keep on guiding her towards these corners where she couldn't get out of and where she had to answer the question. A major part in the case that got Arias to kind of break down and stammer and not be able to keep up is when Juan Martinez, he took out what's known as the gas can evidence. So he took the model of the car she rented, the amount of gas that she bought, and he calculated the distance it would take to get from her house to Alexander's house to the meeting in Utah. And when he did the math and consulted several mechanics and several, I guess, car experts, he found that the distance matched almost exactly.
Cool.
Yeah, so it was reasonable that that amount of gas could have gotten her from her house to Travis's house where she could kill him, and then to the meeting in Utah. Now, that shows premeditation. She bought all that gas knowing she was going to make a pit stop, and she wanted to buy all that gas so that she wouldn't have buying receipts at different gas stations.
That's fair.
Yeah, so it looks like she just went from her house to the Utah meeting because she only had one tank of gas. The clip I'm about to play you is fairly long. It's about 5 minutes in length. But I think it's worth listening to because it's one of the big linchpins in the case. Basically, prosecutor Martinez needed to prove that she purchased gas in a third gas can because he needed the gas in that third gas can in order for her to make her full trip without being caught. And he needed to prove that she was lying about returning the third gas can, that in fact she still had it on her, and that she filled it with that gas. It would also help his case because if he can prove that she was lying about something she says she has full memory of, then she could be lying about other things in the case. So here is Martinez cross-examining Jodi Arias about the gas can purchases.
Ma'am, one of the things that you told us was that you were going to tell the truth, the whole truth, throughout this proceeding. Do you remember that when you took the oath?
Yes, to the best of my recollection.
Am I asking you to the best of your recollection that you took the oath, ma'am?
Objection, argumentative, Judge.
Sustained.
Ma'am, do you remember standing in front of the clerk to Judge Stevens' left and being sworn in? Do you remember that?
Yes.
And do you remember being asked, will you tell the truth, the whole truth? Do you remember being told that?
Yes.
And you swore that you would, right?
Yes.
Ma'am, the other thing that you told us with regard to these gas cans is that you purchased one in Salinas, California, right?
Yes.
5-gallon gas can, right?
Yes.
And you purchased this gas can in Salinas, and you said after a short period of time, you didn't say a period of time, but you said that you returned it back to the store, the Walmart in Salinas, right?
That's correct.
And it's the same store that you brought it from, right?
Yes.
Because it was probably because it was in the same general vicinity, right?
Right.
And ma'am, one of the other things that you said was that the reason that you did this was because it was expensive and it didn't seem to make sense to you to get that gas can, right?
Yeah, in hindsight, I realized it didn't make sense.
All right. So why is it then, ma'am, that you showed up with 3 gas cans in Salt Lake City?
Objection, Mr. Chair, to testimony.
Overruled.
You know, so the questions as well.
Approach, please. To answer the gas can question, I went to Mesa with 2 gas cans.
Well, you left Salt Lake City area in the very early morning hours, right?
Yes,
You filled up with gas, right?
I think I did. I don't know.
Well, let's look. Let's start looking at this. And that's Tesoro, right? That's
Yes.
a gas station, right?
Yes,
And you put some gasoline there, right?
yes,
Right? And it does tell us here that you went to pump number 2, right?
yes,
Put in 10.672 gallons, right?
yes,
And the price for each one was $3.85 per gallon, right?
yes,
And it was $41.18, right?
yes,
Then at exhibit 237.017, same gas station. You see that?
yes,
You see the date and the approval time?
yes,
It's 4:05 in the morning, correct?
correct.
And on this one, it's 36.98, right?
Yes,
And it talks about that you're at pump 2 again, and it's 9.583 gallons, right?
that's correct.
You actually put in more gas, though, didn't you?
I don't know.
Well, then let's take a look at, you had a bank account with Washington Mutual, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
And in fact, we have some receipts here that talk about you having an account with Washington Mutual. In fact, you had 2 of them, right?
Yes, a business and a personal.
And there are records that Washington Mutual keeps, don't they?
Yes.
You aware of that?
Yes.
And there are statements that they send out to you, don't they?
I think I got them online, usually.
But there are statements that are prepared, whether they are
Yes.
online or they're sent out, right?
That's correct.
And if you take a look at this purchase here from Tesoro, you see the amount there?
Yes,
How much is that, ma'am?
$36.98.
Okay. Let's take a look at exhibit number 237.017. How much is the amount?
$36.98.
It's the same station, it's same amount, correct?
Correct.
That's the same purchase, right?
Yes.
And exhibit number 237.016, it's for how much, ma'am?
$41.18.
And if we go down here, do you see that right there?
Yes.
How much is that?
$41.18.
That's the same amount, right?
Correct.
And then you do have, though, a third transaction there. Do you see that?
Yes.
1965, right?
Yes.
Ma'am, if we go back to exhibit number 237.017, how much was the price per gallon that you bought that day?
It looks like $3.85.
And 9/10, right?
Yes.
Ma'am, if you take this amount per gallon, 3.859 cents per gallon, and you divide it into this amount of 1965, do you know how much, what that division would indicate?
No.
Would it surprise you that it would indicate that it's 5.09? Would that surprise you?
No.
So, you make 3 purchases here, don't you?
Yes.
You also, there are 2 purchases for sure that we know that are for gas, right?
That's correct.
The other one is for 1965, right?
Yes.
If we do the mathematics, that equals 5 gallons of gas. If you were putting gas.
Objection argumentative is there's no testimony that it was gas purchased.
Overruled. What was your question?
The question is a mathematical one, ma'am. Isn't it true that if you divide 1965 by 3.859, that you would get 5.09?
If the math is correct, then yes.
And you did indicate to us that you did buy a 3rd can in Salinas, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
And you bought that in Salinas, and it was a 5-gallon gas can, right?
That's correct.
Ma'am, would it surprise you that the Walmart in Salinas does not have any record of any refund back on June 2nd when you claim you bought this, or June 3rd when you claim you bought this, of a
Argumentative
refund.
beyond the scope.
Approach, please.
So how did they track that? How do they know she did that?
They interviewed the person that was attending that day,
Oh.
and they also caught her on security camera buying the gas cans. In closing arguments, Juan Martinez argued that it took 2 minutes for Travis to die. Basically, the autopsy showed the order of events that happened in his body, and a lot of the stab wounds happened one by one, a fair distance apart, and it showed that each one made had time to bleed. So she was very slowly stabbing him as he was crawling away.
That's pretty scary.
Yeah.
That's horrifying.
When the police and investigation looked at the walls, they could very clearly tell evidence of Travis stumbling and crawling away from her as she is stabbing, because most of the stab wounds are to his back. It appears that when he got to the tub, the two last wounds that were made were one where she grabbed him by the hair and slit his throat neck to neck, and then a shot in the back of the head to finish him off.
Yikes.
Juan Martinez, he argued for the death penalty because he believed that the 2 minutes it took to die was brutal and excruciating. And that's one of the standards you need to qualify for the death penalty. The crime has to be overly brutal and overly cruel.
I never agree with the death penalty.
No, nor I.
Yeah, I'm just showing.
But it definitely sounds like she was guilty.
Yeah, I'm just sharing the prosecution's arguments. I don't believe in the death penalty much either. Yeah, Canadians, you know.
We love people.
Oh yes. After 15 hours of deliberation with the jury, Arias was found guilty of first-degree murder.
No shit.
Yeah, no shit.
Out of 12 jurors, 5 jurors found her guilty of first-degree premeditated murder, and 7 jurors found her guilty of both first-degree premeditated murder and felony murder.
What's the difference between first degree and felony? Let's Google it.
Okay. Present Sage is going to Google it.
Felony murder. The rule of felony murder is a legal doctrine in some common law jurisdictions that broadens the crime of murder. When an offender kills regardless of intent to kill, in the commission of a dangerous or enumerated crime called felony, he/she is guilty of murder. So basically, you've been playing it for a while.
You've been playing it for a while.
Yeah, and
shut up.
And just to emphasize this for the listeners, the 2 points of premeditation that are shown is the robbery of her grandparents.
I was peeing during that.
Oh yes. So her grandparents had a robbery and had a gun stolen,
Nope.
and it was found later that she staged that robbery in order to get the gun without being caught getting the gun, and also the gas cans.
Yeah.
That was the second piece of premeditation.
All right.
Prosecutor Martinez showed off a photo of the corpse and the crime scene, so kind of a little slideshow.
Did he show it or show it off?
Oh, he showed it. He showed it on a projector in the court, and then he sat in silence for 2 minutes. And at the end of those 2 minutes, he said, "And that's how long it took Travis to die. And that's why, ladies and gentlemen, you should put this man to death."
No, that's
put this
fucking
woman to death.
offensive.
Yeah.
Damn.
Oh, yeah.
I wouldn't have thought to do that.
That's really good.
Yeah, for sentencing, she was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole.
The court has considered the nature and circumstances of the offense. I have considered the aggravating factor found by the jury. I have identified aggravating and mitigating factors and considered those factors in arriving at a sentence for Ms. Arias. As aggravation, the court finds, as the jury found, the crime was especially cruel. The offense was committed with at least 2 deadly weapons, a gun and at least 1 knife. The crime involved substantial planning and preparation. The defendant did not render aid to the victim. The defendant destroyed evidence at the crime scene. The defendant went to great lengths to conceal her involvement in the crime. The court has also considered, as an aggravating factor, the emotional and financial harm to the victim family members. As mitigation, the court finds the defendant has no prior criminal history. The defendant has family and community support. The defendant has mental health issues. The court has also considered the defendant's childhood background, family history, and her expressed remorse. The court finds the mitigation presented is not sufficiently substantial to call for leniency and that a natural life sentence is appropriate. It is ordered the defendant shall be incarcerated in the Department of Corrections for the rest of her natural life with no possibility of parole.
So she's going to
Which
be...
in Canada means...
25 years.
25 years, yeah.
But since this is...
And then you'll get out and get into a halfway house.
But since
I'll speak with you.
But since this is in America, she has life in prison without the possibility of parole. She's had quite an active media life. She's had lots of interviews after the fact. Okay, now this is a part of the trial that's often not talked about, and it's
Daft, D-A-F-T.
Yeah, daft bodies. Now the defense didn't have much to go on. It was clear that Jodi admitted to do it. It was kind of clear that she premeditated it. So one of the only defenses they had to go with was trashing Alexander. Now, usually murder trials don't have a funny moment, but this one does have a funny moment. They found... Now, this is an example of the defense not doing their job. They didn't do their research, and they were made to be fools in the courtroom because of it. They were saying that Travis Alexander was a perverted individual because the last video he watched before he died was a porn video called Daft...
Who cares?
Was called Daft Bodies, Harder, Better, Faster, Stronger.
Let the man jack off.
Now, it's clear that the defense people looked at the title of the video and didn't actually look up the video itself, because let me show the people in the studio here what the video is.
And sorry, what was it called?
Daft Bodies, Harder, Better, Faster, Stronger.
Like that Daft Punk video.
That is it, yeah.
Show it. You're looking at it yourself.
It is on my phone.
How do
I have it
You
on...
don't know how
There
to...
we go.
Fuck, you can't watch porn properly? It's not doing it for me yet.
Just skinny people in black shorts?
Now, the video playing is two girls with words written on their thighs and their arms. And what they're doing is to the tune of Harder, Better, Faster, Stronger by Daft Punk. They're basically manipulating their bodies in order to spell the lyrics of the song. Let me forward fast it.
Yeah, let's
it's
forward
super
faster.
boring.
Yeah, literally they just show it words.
Does it get
It's
any
like
better
thighs.
than this?
Like, who cares?
Do they take their clothes off?
It's interesting. It was more interesting in the 90s.
In the 90s. We are in 2018.
Yeah, this is a video that was around when I was in high school.
I still don't understand.
Yeah, I don't get it either.
They're literally wearing boy shorts.
Is this a porn?
It's not a porn.
No, it's
Well,
not a
then
porn.
why
That's
did you
the
sell
point.
it as
Yeah.
a porn?
Well,
And they're wearing
court
like
did.
Because
athletic bras.
I'm trying to
Who
illustrate.
cares?
I'm trying to illustrate how shitty of a job the defense did.
The defense clearly did a shitty job
Yeah,
because
they
no
bas-
one is getting off on that.
They looked at the title of that video and they said, "Oh, it's a porn." And because it's a porn, Travis Alexander is a
delinquent, a sex
pervert.
pervert.
Yeah, he's a sex pervert, so that's why she had to kill him in self-defense. Because if he's a porn-watching pervert, he's probably a woman beater too.
That's
Good
not a
Lord.
porn video though. Like I
the
thought this
point,
was a different
yeah.
version where there'd be porn in it.
Yeah,
but
and
this is
Even
the original video.
Kaz thinks it's not a porn video.
And in the trial, they said that it was a YouTube video, and anybody
You can't put porn on YouTube.
Yeah.
I would be comfortable letting my 3-year-old watch that.
Yeah, so I hope that's a little bit of levity to end this off, because his death is kind of brutal.
It's really sad, but the defense is really dumb.
Yeah, it's terrible defense.
And if you want to be insane like me, feel free to watch the whole trial on YouTube.
Feel free.
It's not beneficial. It's
No,
it's not entertaining.
I will not be watching it.
And when Jan Martinez is not doing the prosecuting,
Juan.
it's boring as fuck. Yeah,
Juan.
yeah. I apologize to anybody.
You're
named-
drunk too.
I am.
We're all drunk. I'm super drunk.
I'm not.
I am sober.
I'm sober.
Okay, Kaz is sober. Leon is maybe sober.
I'm sober.
I don't. Yeah, okay.
You had 3 times as much liquor as I did.
I have drank so much tonight.
Anyways, this podcast is obviously going to the stars. So
I am very drunk.
okay, so I've been Oud Gallifrey.
I've been
Sage Murray.
Anyways, that's our drunken retelling of the Jodi Arias case. To play us out this episode, to completely ruin the levity that we built up, here is a recording of Jodi Arias singing in a prison talent show. Join me after the palate cleanser for a couple of responses straight from the Facebook group about this case. Enjoy.
Oh, holy night, the stars are brightly shining. It is the night of our dear Savior's birth. Long lay the world in sin and error pining, till he appeared and the soul felt its worth. A thrill of hope, the weary world rejoices, for yonder breaks a new and glorious morn. Fall on your knees, oh hear the angel voices, oh night divine, oh night when Christ was born, oh night divine, oh night divine.
Alrighty, the after show is going to be nice, short, and simple this week. Something I want to start doing is in our Facebook discussion group, which is the Occultae Veritatis podcast discussion group, simple name. You guys can find it and look it up on Facebook. Every week I'm going to be posting the case that we just posted, and I'm going to try and make an effort to read people's questions, responses, reactions to the case, and see what we got wrong, what we could have done better, what people agree with us with, what people disagree with us with. So, let's do that. Starting with Carmen from Canada. She says, I know nothing about this case, but I do have a quibble with something you said. Someone who is controlling about their partner's friends and movements isn't clingy, they are abusive. I couldn't agree more. I think clingy is one of those weasel words that people use to basically downplay abuse. People say like, oh, my ex was clingy, or oh, my partner was clingy, and sometimes they're generally talking about somebody who just won't give them enough space. But when we are talking about Jodi and what she did, breaking into his house, slashing his tires, listening in on secret conversations, listening in on phone calls, controlling who his friends can be, controlling who he visits, controlling what he does. I think all those, although we label them as clingy, they are most definitely abuse. So, yeah, we'll try to make our word choice better for next time, and try not to use little weasel words to downplay events. Jessica says, I have a lot of mixed feelings about the case. I know it's not best to speak ill of the dead, but Travis reminds me a lot of an ex of mine that also passed away. They were both assholes, and I think that really did fuck with Jodi's head. Problem is, she was a bit nuts, too. Yeah, there were some certain things brought up in the court case from the defense that said that Travis displayed some emotionally abusive behavior. He would often call her names. He would make fun of her intelligence. He would make fun of the things she chose to do sometimes. He would make fun of her failures in life. She, in turn, made fun of him right back. She called him names. She made fun of things about his life. And it seems like they're two very toxic people that were attracted to each other for sexual gratification. That's what it seems like to me. Now, of course, nobody really knows what the basis of their relationship is except for Travis and Jodi. And unfortunately, Travis is not here to tell his side of the story. All the bouts of abuse that Jodi has brought up have been after the fact. And psychologists say that she doesn't display the classic signs of a person who is physically abused. I'm not arguing that there isn't any emotional abuse. The text messages and the recordings show that there was a level of emotional abuse. I'm just not sure that the retaliation required is Travis's brutal murder. Anyways, I think that this case definitely has shades of gray, and although I'm quite biased because I've read Martinez's book and I've watched the whole trial, and I'm very biased towards Jodi because I see her as almost a constant liar. She can't help but continue to tell new lies. So I'm putting my bias forward. I could have my view very colored here. And there have been defendants of Jodi that, they're in the minority, but there have been defendants of Jodi that say that this kind of brutal attack where she went into overkill mode could be a sign of building tension from being emotionally abused being released all at once. But of course, I still don't think it's a proportional response. Another person, Tanya, says on our Facebook group, Occultae Veritatis podcast discussion group, they say, "Ugh, this case, I just picked up Conviction by Juan Martinez. He's going to be at CrimeCon." Yeah, he's going to be at CrimeCon this year, 2018, and his book Conviction is very good. I've both read the book and listened to the audiobook, and it takes you through the whole case, from the moment he is called to go inspect the crime scene at Travis Alexander's house, right to the moment of when Jodi is sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Jesse also comments, "This case frustrates me. It's like two not great humans get together and bad shit happens. It was obviously overkill. However, I wish I knew how he was treating her. Was he emotionally abusive? I have so many questions." I think that he was emotionally abusive, and she was emotionally abusive back to him. I think it goes both ways, and I agree with you that it's two not great people that have gotten together for sexual reasons. And it ended in an explosive way. If she were just to leave and get on with her life, I think I would hold no fault with either of them. She stalked him and slashed his tires and damaged his property, and he emotionally abused her, and she emotionally abused him back. There was toxicity all around. It was the careful planning of his murder that makes me turn right against her and see Travis as a victim, because the murder was not only covered up and planned, it was also brutal and painful, and it took a long time, and his body was brutalized, and she did everything she could to cover it up. Anyways, that's enough catawumping for my taste. If you disagree with anything I have here, feel free to leave a voicemail at ovpod.ca. There's a space for voicemail. Feel free to send an email. I'll read it on the show. And also, as always, on the podcast discussion group on Facebook, I'll be posting this episode up. And if you want to give your opinions on the case and things that you think that we've gotten wrong or missed, or even things that you thought we did good on or got right, you can comment on there. As always, follow us on Twitter, follow us on Instagram. All our social medias are always pumping out pictures, articles, videos related to the case released that week. So if you want some extra context, extra info, feel free to send that up. Thank you for letting us, invade your ear holes once again this week. Thank you for spending a bit of your weekend or a bit of your week or a bit of your drive, whatever you're doing, just listening to the Occultae Veritatis. We wouldn't be able to do this podcast if it wasn't for our fans downloading and keeping our spirits up and supporting us. So thank you very much. You guys have a wonderful week, and keep your stick on the ice.